Good morning and welcome. Thank you, as always, for listening to Bat Talk with Sharona. I am your host. Of course, my name is Sharona, and we're going to do a real quick show this morning, a little bit of a celebratory show. There have been some successes for the resistance. Shout out to the resistance for, I feel like Robin Williams in Good Morning Vietnam, because what is taking place across the country is it's very exciting. We're seeing a lot of engagement. We're seeing engagement on a level that we haven't with our government, that we haven't seen in a long, long time. And so we're going to talk about that. We'll celebrate some of the small successes that we've had and talk about some of the areas where there's still a lot of work to be done. The fight's not over by any measure. There's a lot of work to be done, a lot of things to to keep an eye upon, to pay attention to. But hey, we have had some successes, and we're going to be talking about some of the things that were addressed, that were pointed out in an article on Vox.com, and this comes from the article comes from a blogger on the internet that I found thankfully through someone else that I follow on Twitter. And if you don't follow her, you should. It's at Blowdelicious, and she's amazing and does amazing work, and her blog is very informative and inspirational and all kinds of things. And, we talk about this a lot, but you should listen to people outside your own little bubble. I think that that's part of the problem that we're seeing, in our country, in the world, is that we get in our own little bubbles and we don't listen to other people. We think that we have all the answers. We think that we know everything, but we don't. And if we can recognize that and just listen to other people, have discussions. You may not want to have these hard conversations, these hard discussions, but they're important. It's important to have them. So let's talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about the Ninth Circuit opinion that dropped yesterday, and then in the final segment, the final 10-15 minutes of the show. And again, we're only going to do about 30 to 45 minutes short show this morning. Just me talking to you, talking about us. So the Vox.com article starts out with what could be. let's put a little disclaimer there. What could be one of the most important early successes of the resistance, and that is the plan to gut the Congressional Ethics Office. And we're seeing there are so many troubling things about the Bannon administration. No, I refuse to call it the Trump administration. We all know who's running the show, right? And it's Breitbart. If you follow me on Twitter, which by the way you can do that, Sports by Sharona. If you follow me on Twitter, you know that I retweeted a little blurb, a little clip. Ashley Feinberg, who used to write for Gawker and is now part of, I think it's the Gizmodo network now. They've gone through a little bit of some changes there because Peter Thiel put them out of business because, for a lot of reasons. We've talked about that. I've written about that. No time to get into that today, but she tweeted out a little video of a quote-unquote interview. And if you watch that, I hope that you caught the fact that the Breitbart interviewer said we made some mistakes. I mean, he tried to cover it up, right? But we know who's running the show here. It's not Donald Trump. It's Steve Bannon, white supremacists. White supremacists run your White House. This is not right. This is not good. This is why the resistance is necessary. It's why it's needed. So, the conflicts of interest are, they sort of have to be at the top. There are a lot of bad things going on with this administration, but that has to be at the top because it is one of the most blatant abuses of power we've ever seen. if I mean, there are a lot of bad things that could happen with this administration. That they are openly and not even trying to hide it, using the office, the White House, as a way to enrich themselves is it might not be the worst thing, because I mean there could be wars, right? I mean, and we're going to talk about internments here in a minute. There are a lot of bad things that this administration could do, but the fact that they are so openly trading on the White House, I mean, Melania Trump, I mean, did you see her lawsuit? Yeah, that's pretty classy. I use that. I hope you caught my sarcastic tone there. Um, so, the conflicts of interest are, they have to be, kind of at the top, and it was um, interesting to see some preliminary uh, inquiry into impeachment was filed yesterday by Representative Nadler, and there are other indications that an impeachment is probably coming at some point because of the conflicts of interest. Donald Trump always says one thing and does another. He said before he was elected that he would divest himself of his business interests. He's not going to do that. He has no intention of doing that. The White House is openly using its platform to encourage you to buy Ivanka Trump's clothing line. That's an ethics violation. So that was an important one. Now, whether the Congressional Ethics Office acts upon these things is another cookie. We'll see how that crumbles, but it's important that it did not happen. That office was not gutted. The ACA, they're running into a lot of opposition regarding their plan to cancel the ACA, the Affordable Care Act. Commonly referred to as. It's interesting that people who object to Obamacare don't object to the ACA. I think that says a lot about a lot of things. A lot of the VA was granted an exemption. There were card holders who were granted exemptions. I don't know that I'm going to. The immigration thing, the Muslim ban thing is, we're not at any point, in my opinion, my humble opinion, we're not at any point where we can celebrate that. The Ninth Circuit jury yesterday was good, but it's small, and it's not over. And even though we're likely to see some successes in court, it's far from over, and what's going on in court is only part of it, and we'll talk about that in a minute when we get to what the ICE is doing and how the roundup is beginning. Internment is beginning. If you're not paying attention, there are people with every right to be here who are being detained, illegally detained, not allowed to have an attorney, not allowed to see or talk to their families. There are a lot of bad things still going on, but certainly there are some small successes there. It's important to celebrate these things, certainly, but understand that there are still things that we need to pay attention to. There's still work to be done. I definitely want to talk this morning. You guys, I tweeted this out this morning. I legitimately woke up at somewhere between 3:30 and 4 o'clock this morning, and could not go back to sleep because my mind was on, and I've been sort of talking a little bit about it. There's a new podcast project that is in the works, non-sports related. There's some other things in the works for me, sports related, that hopefully I can share with you guys soon. But I've been tossing around an idea about a non-sports related different type of podcast, and it was on my mind this morning, and so I spent like a couple of hours mulling it over and thinking about it, and planning and doing a lot of things, and it's I love it when a plan comes together. I think it's coming together. So, maybe next week we'll launch that. We'll see. You can stay tuned to my Twitter page, or check out Back Talk with Sharona, my website. Maybe an announcement there. But here's another thing. A House Republican plan for a massive sell-off of public lands has been canceled. I mean, this goes back to the whole enrichment thing and how your White House is openly committed to enriching itself and its buddies and its cronies from, your land, your money, your tax dollars. It's pretty incredible that they're so brazen about it. But fortunately, the resistance is here, and we are not going to be silent. We're not going to be complacent. We understand and we recognize that small battles are being won, but the war still rages on, and it's incumbent upon us to be in this for the long haul, to not become complacent, to understand that there are going to be a lot of things, and I think a part of it's deliberate. They're throwing a lot of things at the wall and going to take a concerted effort to keep up with everything. And there are going to be some rabbit holes that we're going to go down, unfortunately, that maybe we shouldn't, but that's all part of it. You live and learn, and you learn from the things that have happened in the past. So it's important to recognize that there are some small successes, but there's still a lot of work to be done. So let's talk a little bit about the Ninth Circuit. It was interesting watching that whole process go down. And this goes back to the town hall thing. If you were paying attention on Twitter last night, there are town hall meetings going on across the country, excuse me, and people are engaged. They're asking questions. They are demanding answers from their elected representatives, and that's important. It's important to let them know. There's an old saying, all politics are local, all things are local, buy local, and it is important to get involved locally and to know and understand what's going on in your own communities. So the Ninth Circuit came out yesterday with a per curiam unanimous opinion upholding a district court ruling from the states of Washington and Minnesota, where the Muslim ban was stayed. There's a stay in place because of certain sections. It was a challenge toward only certain sections. And remember, what we're talking about right now are really more procedural things than we are the merits of EO, the Muslim ban. I've got a little kitten trying to cause trouble here. The merits of the Muslim ban have not been addressed yet. It will be addressed at some point. But so far, that has not been addressed. But if you read that opinion, it's pretty clear. It's fascinating in a lot of ways. And I tweeted out some of my thoughts about it. But one of the more fascinating things to me is that even though it wasn't addressed, you could see how, and this was unanimous. If you listen, that's one of the more fascinating things about this. There were over 100,000 people listening online to an oral argument on a stay, which was ultimately determined to be whether or not it was going to stay in order from a district court granting a stay. Procedure on top of procedure. Well, makes your head want to explode. But, it was fascinating to watch that engagement and to watch and to see people listening in on that, because this is our country and we all have a vested interest in knowing what's going on. And it's one of the best things to come out of the nightmare that we're all in is to watch this engagement. That, my friends, is the most important win that we've seen so far in this process. And I wanted to get to an article just real quickly, excuse me, touch upon an article. It's fascinating. We're going to talk about this in greater detail because the time's not going to permit us to go into it as closely as I would like. It's by Peter Layden. He's the founder and CEO of reInvent, which is a media company, and it's entitled "Why Trump's Inauguration Is Not the Beginning of an Era, but the End." And this is something that he said, "I did not see Trump coming." Well, I did. I know friends did. All the women I know did because, for God's sake, we've seen it. Every single one I have seen a blustering, blundering man get a job over an eminently more qualified woman for reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with job qualifications. But this is what he says. Trump is of something much bigger and more fundamental going on in the world. So are the people behind Brexit in Great Britain. They are not driving the change. They are reacting to the change. They are not showing the way forward. They are making desperate attempts to cling to the past, a past that is gone forever. The world is in the relatively early stages of an almost inevitable transition to what can best be understood as a new 21st century civilization. Man, do I want to believe that's true. And he goes on to talk about Hillary Clinton and how Hillary Clinton would not have been the genesis for this kind of change. And I tend to agree with that. But we're going to talk, that is a part of it that I really want to talk about in greater detail. And I'm just going to go on the record here and say I like Hillary Clinton. I would not have always been willing to say those words. But having watched the grace to which she handled everything in the presidential election last year, I can say it now. I like Hillary Clinton, and I'm still mad about how some in the media tried to portray that race and portray. I wanted to scream every time I saw political debate. It's nasty last night. No, one person got nasty. The other person did not. It was just ridiculous. But we don't want to talk about that today because I do want to get to this other stuff. The Trump is the symptom of something much bigger. It's absolutely true. If you're paying attention, there is a wave of white nationalism, white supremacy, not just in this country. Swastikas are showing up in schools. There was, I think, a frat, a Greek organization that felt completely comfortable sending out white supremacist themed Valentines. I mean, these things are not okay. It's not okay. I mean, it's not okay anywhere, but we fought a war over white nationalism in the Nazi party, not just Nazis, fascism and Nazism, Nazis, both in parts of the world. They killed millions of people, millions and millions of people. This is not a free speech thing. These people they're bad people. They were set upon exterminating another group of people. That's not right. That's not good. But I want to believe that he's right and that the engagement that we're seeing and the commitment to affecting change is a sign of things to come. I'm not so convinced, and I don't think it's wise or incumbent upon us to be convinced, because that means we might let up, and we cannot let up. We can't let up. It's important to to stay engaged, to continue the fight, politicians always bear watching, okay? This is not, I mean, for me, it's not partisan politics. It's about what this nation is supposed to stand for. We have never really met the ideals to which we aspire, the ideals that we profess, that we stand for. We've never met those. But that doesn't mean that we can't continue trying. We should continue trying. Those ideals are worth for. The Constitution is worth fighting for. The Constitution is for all of us. And it's important that that we continue, that fight. So we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about a little bit about the impeachment. We're going to talk about what ICE is doing. Maybe talk a little bit about impeachment because we've talked about that before. I've expressed my reservations about it. So stay tuned in. You're listening to Back Talk with Sharona. All right, welcome back. You are listening to Back Talk with Sharona. I'm your host. My name is Sharona. All right, quick show today, roughly about 10 minutes left. So let's talk about areas that we need to be. We talked about the conflicts of interest. That is important. That is something that oversight is crucial. We have to pay attention to how the White House is openly monetizing its position and trying to siphon off your land, your tax dollars. I mean, there's just so much. It makes my head want to explode. And there are already Congress is already being asked to look at that. That's important. It's important to pay attention to. There are reporters out there who are doggedly reporting on it. That's important. It is an important topic. But let's not forget that even though we are fighting the Muslim ban in court, there are nefarious things going on outside of the courtroom that bear watching, that bear our attention and our involvement. ICE is going out into our communities and trying to round up people. Some of these people have every right to be here, but they don't discriminate. I mean, well, they do discriminate, but that was a poor choice of words. There is very much an anti-Muslim sentiment in our government, in this country, in this administration, that reeks of prejudice, it reeks of discrimination. These people are being ripped from their families. Some, people with every right to be here are being deported back to places where the odds are pretty darn high that they're not going to survive. Where are the pro-life people? I thought the quote unquote alt-right, the Trumps, the Trumpeteers, I thought you guys were pro-life. Where's the pro-life people? These people are going to be killed. Where is your outrage? Or are you really pro-life? Is that just code for something else? Because I sure don't see a lot of outrage from people who support this administration over the fact that there are going to be people killed who have every right to be here in this country. The hypocrisy is pretty amazing to me when you consider that Christian ideals were one of the so-called alleged reasons for why so many white Americans voted for Donald Trump. Well, where are your Christian values? What would Jesus do? People who have every right to be here are being interned and not being provided an attorney, are being and they're being asked questions about what they think about the Trump administration. You know, if you look at world history and if you look at what happened in Germany, listen, I mean, the parallels are frightening between what we see happening in our country right now and what happened in Germany right before the Nazis took over. And you have Nazis in your White House. You have white supremacists in your White House. You have a White House that has its own state informational network. Two of them. I mean, they're really part and parcel of the same thing, but it's pay attention to what's going on. It's amazing. We need to keep an eye on what ICE is doing and the ICE is doing, and they cannot be allowed to to do what we did to the Japanese back when we interned so many people into camps. That is one of our national disgraces. And it's happening again. We said it would never happen again. It is happening again. Pay attention. Pay attention to what's going on. So the articles of impeachment, that's kind of interesting because if you listen to this show, you know that I've expressed some reservations. I just don't, the line of succession is scary. Mike Pence and Paul Ryan, I mean, they helped create the situation that we're in. Does anybody trust them to? I don't trust them to do the right thing. You shouldn't trust them to do the right thing. I think that they were part of this. Where are we on finding out about the Russian involvement in the hijacking of our election? Who was involved in that? How far does that go? Where are we on that? Why is the media not reporting on that? We need to know that. Was treason committed? I mean, that's pretty important that we know that. So we need to know those things. But the articles of impeachment thing is interesting because, once a lot of smart people talk about it, people smarter than me, and, it certainly could be a means to make sure that some of the more nefarious steps that that this administration could take don't happen. It could help stop some of the things that. So that it's something to consider. It's something to think about, and we're going to be considering that. We're going to be thinking about that in the weeks and months to come. We aren't even a month into this administration, and look where we are. It's crazy. We live in crazy times. It's all right. We're going to take a quick break. We come back. We're going to wrap things up, so stay tuned in. You are listening to Back Talk with Sharona. All right, welcome back. Thanks for listening again. This has been Back Talk with Sharona. I am your host. You can follow me on Twitter at Sports by Sharona. Check out my website, Back Talk with Sharona. Check out my sports-related work at Inside the Pylon. Super Bowl. We did a Super Bowl wrap-up show on Tuesday. Robin Mundy of the Bills Wire joined me. Always a pleasure to have Robin on this podcast. Shout out to her for joining me. After the Super Bowl, I took a look at the post-game quotes from some of the Falcons players and wrote about that for Inside the Pylon. Kyle Shanahan, interesting quotes from him, interesting quotes from Grady Jarrett. So check that out. And big things are going on there. So, follow all the guys at Inside the Pylon. Check out their work. They do amazing work. It is really exciting to be part of that and to be associated with them. So we'll be back next week. Probably we did a Tuesday show instead of a Wednesday show because that fit Robin's schedule a little bit better. But next week, I don't know. We may try to do a Monday show with this new project that I just mentioned briefly a little bit earlier. I'm still tossing around, what we're going to do there. But, you can check out the website or check out my Twitter feed for news about that. I hope that you have a wonderful weekend. Be kind to one another. We'll be back next week, so stay tuned in. You've been listening to Back Talk with Sharona.